Let me tell you first what we're not going to do. And I'll prove to you that you're not looking for that. We're not going to deal with this cerebrally. I'm not going to explain to you why a bad thing happened. I'm not going to try to rationalize and make sense out of people suffering. The truth is that you have no interest in logical explanations because I teach every Tuesday night and the crowd is usually 1/3. So if everybody was worried about the logical explanations of things, they would come all the time to learn. We're all here tonight because we're in pain. We're here tonight because our emotions are in a state of upset. We're here tonight because we feel vulnerable, we feel angry, we feel upset. And invariably, when things like this happen, we ask questions, and we express frustration, and we feel a crisis of faith. And this can be disconcerting for somebody who wants to believe in Hashem. And you ask questions like, how could God do this? Why would God do this? And then you feel maybe like a bad person, maybe like you have no faith. If you're asking a question like this, you must be terrible, and that means you don't believe in Hashem. So none of this is true. And just as it would not be reasonable to try to peg a round hole with a square plug, or vice versa, because it just doesn't fit, no amount of rhyme, reason, logic, or rationale is going to be able to assist somebody when they're in emotional distress. When you're in emotional distress, you need an emotional response. So the first thing that I want to deal with today is when we have questions and when we're upset. And I'm not talking about the foolishness of apportioning blame, but ultimately, if we're people of faith, it comes back to Hashem. It's like, what is going on in our world? And really and truly, these questions are age-old questions, and there are 6 million questions, or many more that we have to deal with. But this is something that happened now, and it's something that's very close to home for us in North America. We're not used to this. And that's kind of what we're doing here tonight. So the first thing that I want to tell you is that if you have questions, it doesn't mean that you don't believe in Hashem. It's not indicative of a lack of faith, but in fact, quite the contrary. And in your handouts, and I thank the Jewish Learning Institute, the JLI, for much of the material we're going to use tonight. We're going to begin by taking a look at a letter that the Rebbe wrote to a woman who had, I presume, survived the Holocaust and had many questions about faith. And this will be kind of our springboard as we begin to not answer why and how things happen, but rather deal with the issue of how should we cope? How can we cope? And how must we cope? I don't know what the letter that the Rebbe received looked like or sounded like, but from the response we can guess that this person either made a statement or expressed concern that he or she doesn't believe in God because of the horrors of the Holocaust. And the Rebbe responds to her. I'll read it in Hebrew. I'll try to make it as much Ivrit Havara for everybody to be able to follow along. And you can follow along in English if you want. The Rebbe wrote...
English translation below the Hebrew?
Yeah.
Translation.
Well, here I have what you have. So, before we begin, I should just mention that this lecture and whatever good you might find in it is dedicated to the memory of the victims of the Pittsburgh Massacre, that the neshama should have a tremendous aliyah, and those who are injured should have a refuah shlema. We should, Eretz Hashem, never ever have to come together for things like this again. So the Rebbe writes like this: Lo rak sha'ani lo ma'amin lazeh sha'at kotevet. Not only do I not believe that which you write, she'enoch ma'amina be'elokim, that you don't believe in God, chas v'shalom, heaven forfend. Ella, the Rebbe writes, not only I don't believe when you say you don't believe, ella barurli, it is absolutely certain to me, shegam at lo ma'amina lazeh. You yourself, the Rebbe writes, don't believe what you are writing. How could he know that? V'hahochachahi, and the proof is, shemidei ra'osach heder hatzedek, that because you see a lack of righteousness, a lack of yosher, things aren't upright, and you see bad things happening around you. Things aren't fair. Shebesivivasech. Omidei halosech. Al zichronech, when you remember Inyan HaShoah, you remember what happened in the Holocaust, Be'ikvot Hitler Yamach Shmo, in the heels of Hitler and the Nazis. May heaven blot out their name. Kamosha Maskira At B'michtavech, as you mentioned in your own letter. Harezeh mevalvel menuchatech. So this causes you to be disturbed. You can't be at peace because of what you saw. Ve'ilu haita hametziot she'ein manhig umitachnen. But if the reality was that there was no force that's conducting or planning affairs, in other words, there is no God, well, in that case, ma'u apela, then why would it be a wonder or astonishing at all kisheyesh me'uraot hepech hatzedek va'yosher, when things aren't right and don't seem fair? In other words, if you don't believe that there is a force or a power that is at play and things aren't right or fair, why should they be right or fair? It's all random. So if it's all random, why would you get upset? And the reality is...
She's saying it's random, perhaps. Isn't that?
No. She's saying, I can't believe in God. I can't believe. What bothers, what disturbs my belief in God? What disables me from expressing my faith? Because how could all of this be happening? So the Rebbe says to her, if you didn't believe in God, there would be no room for frustration. The only reason that there's frustration to begin with is because you expect things to go a certain way. We have expectations. We think that the world should be a place in which things are fair and right and good, where innocent people don't suffer, where bad people don't prosper. We think that's the way it should be. Why should it be that way? If everything is random, why would you have that expectation? It's just very logical. I mean, after all, realistically speaking, we know that we live in a world where if nature just takes over, so to speak, Hagodo mechavero chayim beloy, whoever is stronger, that's who swallows the other one. That's how it is in the animal world. It's the way it is. Whoever is stronger wins. Survival of the fittest. V'hashe'elohi lo rak b'mamadim gdolim. The truth the Rebbe says is the question is not only about big events like the Holocaust, which you mentioned. Ki gam b'maslul hachayim, even when we talk about, let's say, simple everyday events, everyday occurrences, chayim afurim, regular day-to-day things, shal kol yom v'yom, roim b'muchash shechol tofa'a shehi hepech hatzedek v'yosher. We all see that when things don't go right or fairly, mevavel et menuchat hanefesh, it bothers us. It bothers us. When you see an innocent person suffering, it bothers you. When you see a person behaving in a bad way, in a harsh way, in a mean way, in a cruel way, it bothers you. Shekol tofa shehi hepech hatzedek v'hayosher. Any occurrence that's the opposite of what's right, just, or fair, milvavelet menuchat hanefesh, it doesn't allow us to rest. Umabitim al zeh, we look at it, ki me'ora shelo tzarech haya lehiyot ken. It shouldn't be this way. The very premise that it shouldn't be this way bespeaks the notion that there has to be a reason why it shouldn't be this way, which can't be just things left to their own devices. If we talk about the inanimate reality, you talk about the chemical world or nuclear physics, or even the animal kingdom, around us, is it fair that lions eat zebras? Is it cruel that lions eat zebras? Do you weep over the small fish that are eaten by the large fish? Does it bother you? Think about this. The people who protest humans killing animals on a regular basis, and they use ridiculous expressions like terminology like murder for the killing of an animal, how about one animal kills the other? What do you propose? To move a police force into the jungle and keep the lions away from the antelopes? And the cougars away from the giraffes, so that everybody should live in peace? Besides the fact that, the ecological system, as you know, would collapse. I have a memory. I'm a little boy. I'm maybe 7, maybe 8 years old, and we lived in New Jersey at the time. And the area we lived in wasn't as built up and urbanized as it is now. I mean, it's a very urbanized place now. And behind us was like a forest. And I have this memory of us seeing a large cat, or something like that, coming out of the forest with a rabbit writhing in his mouth. And as small children, we were very traumatized. And my brother and I started to scream at the top of our lungs. And it was like in the late afternoon or evening, my father happened to be home. And my father ran out, and he was also traumatized. And I remember him grabbing a stick and screaming, and we rescued the rabbit from the evil cat. That's how we felt. And in the moment, that seemed like the right thing to do. But really and truly, do we get upset about the fact that animals eat each other? It's just the way it is. It's nature. We don't expect it to be different. So the very fact that we don't expect it to be different, it doesn't cause us a lack of peace. It doesn't cause us concern. Nobody has, most people at least, don't have a difficult time turning on the National Geographic channel and seeing what happens in the safari and getting upset about it. You would certainly have a difficult time watching people kill people. I mean, although people pay to see that when it's fake. But if it was real, you would have a very difficult time. Those are graphic images. Facebook supposedly doesn't let you see them unless warns you first. So, bevadai shechoser menucha hanigremet al yedei tofat elu, certainly the lack of peace that's caused by these events, mekusher b'mashahu shehu l'mayla mehadomim tzomeach v'chai. It's got to be something which is larger than nature, bigger than nuclear or quantum physics. It's got to be bigger than the inanimate world. It has to be larger than the vegetative world and larger than the animal kingdom. It also has to be higher than a person, or than humanity, or the human race. So this thing which causes us unease, this thing which makes us upset, is found in our hearts. It's found in our heart. It's not found in our biology, it's found in our heart. And therefore it is with great certitude in the eyes of each and every one, that the world should be a fair place, that the world should be a just place. And when you see things which are the opposite of fairness or justice, it bothers you. Because of this feeling in our heart, because of this, call it our humanity, which is not a biological term. Because of our human spirit, because of our soul, we feel and believe that the world should be a place that's fair, a place that's just. If you see something which isn't right, a person uses every ounce of wherewithal and energy. Why did this happen? How did this happen? How can we stop it from happening? What can I do to make the world a better place? So the Rebbe posits that the very fact that humanity functions in this way, the very fact that we are bothered by things happening in this world that don't seem fair and right, is the biggest proof that deep down, every single human being really believes in God, or believes in a force that necessarily can take care of us. Now, there are really three things being said here, if you think about it. Number one, that there is a creator, rhyme and reason, mission and purpose. Everything isn't random. Number two, that creator didn't go on a 6,000-year vacation and put the world into automatic and disappear, but we actually believe or seem to feel that creator can and therefore must meddle. And if there is a God, but since we're angry, clearly we believe there's a God, it has to be right. God has to make it. Where was God? Why didn't God stop that? So you obviously believe that not only there is a God, but the fact that you're getting angry about it is because you feel and believe that God could do something about it. And number three, from the fact that it bothers you and you're upset, you must also, in your mind and heart, accept the premise that not only God could, but He should. He rightfully should do something. Now, if you think that somebody should do something for you, you're assuming immediately that person necessarily cares about you. Because if he doesn't care about me, he's not going to help me. If you see somebody who doesn't care about another person, you say, how could you not care? How could you see a person suffer and not be enraged? How could you see a person who's in pain and not do something if you could alleviate the situation? Because it's expected that not only you can, but if you can, it's expected you should. You should care. Why? Because a human being should care about another human being. You should do unto others as you want done unto yourself. A lot of people will behave this way, not because they're of a particular faith, not because of religious credo, because that's what they think is the humanistic, the appropriate, the nice, the proper thing to do. So we clearly believe, A, that there is a God, because if the world was just a place in which randomness ensued, we wouldn't get angry, and we are upset. So if we're upset, then something bothers us. You can't be upset at nothing. If there's no God, you can't be upset. Who are you upset at? Why does it bother you if somebody else believes there's a God? You know there's no God. Incidentally, all the atheists I've met so far, they're all angry. And I don't know why. They're all upset. It bothers them that I believe. Why does it bother you if I believe? Does it bother you if I'm insane? This person's a fool. The person's a fool. If I'm a fool, what are you getting upset about it for? It's almost like a viciousness. You can't believe that. So the very fact that a person gets upset about this is the biggest proof that deep down, we actually do believe. A number of years ago, I was on John Oakley. It was a while I was on John Oakley's Culture Wars for a while. And there was there's a Jewish kid who used to come on and fight with me. His father wasn't Jewish, his mother was Jewish, he's Jewish. And he was a very, very proud atheist. He was very skilled. He's a good speaker. He was very poised. And on one occasion, we were walking out, and he says, "So you're a police chaplain?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Are you the only police chaplain?" I said, "No, there's a bunch of chaplains in New York Regional Police. I'm the only Jewish one." He said, "What are the other ones?" I said, "We have a Muslim chaplain, we have a Catholic chaplain, we have an Anglican chaplain, there's a Baptist chaplain." He says to me, "Is there an atheist chaplain?" So I looked at him and I said, "Justin, what are you talking about?" He goes, "What do you think? We don't have souls?" I'm like, "That's what I was trying to say for an hour on the radio." Of course he has a soul. And then when I asked him to put on tefillin, his reaction was not calm, which says to me that he has a Yiddish soul. And it's like somehow that got through to him. So the notion that we get upset about things like this is the biggest proof that deep down we have a tremendous amount of faith. If we didn't have such a certainty, if we weren't so bolstered with this absolute certitude that A, the world isn't a random place, that it didn't just evolve by accident, because if it evolved by accident, what would you be upset about? How could you expect it to go otherwise? The bigger one eats up the little one. That's the way it goes. That's how it is in the oceans. That's how it is in the jungle. Why should it be any different here? And the very fact that we not only believe that the world should be functioning right, not only because the world was created with a purpose and there's some kind of mission and meaning behind this all, we actually believe that how could God not do this? Where was God? That is to say, you believe God could have done something about it. And not only God could have done something about it, but that you necessarily believe that God cares about humanity. And He cares about every person. Because if He didn't care about every person, why would you get upset at somebody suffering? So the fact that some of us might feel angry, and even maybe angry, maybe upset with Hashem, and we're struggling with our faith now. There was one cartoon which I saw, which really it's like a stab in the heart. I don't know if you saw this cartoon. It's a cartoon of, it looks, you see the barbed wire, like two shadows walking with yellow stars. And the cartoon intimates that these latest arrivals, 97-year-old Holocaust survivor, and the caption is still, and the answer is yeah. That's like in our minds, we're past this. It's like we're going to fight this. The whole world is against this. This is the face of evil. Never again will the world sit by idly and do nothing about this. And this is an evil the world won't accept. And it can happen, and it couldn't happen. And it's without any kind of justification. It just can't be. In our minds, it can't be. We have this picture of how the world should be today. And we compartmentalize, the Holocaust, we don't put that in the back burners. Oftentimes, we can't think about it too much. But this is, now we've evolved to somehow move past this, and then all of a sudden we find out, the world hasn't changed that much. And we're angry, and we're frustrated, and how could Hashem be letting this happen? So I'm not going to try to tell you why Hashem might do or doesn't do what He does. I'm just going to tell you, first and foremost, the fact that you're upset about this, and the fact that that you came tonight and you're looking for answers or some kind of response, is because you believe in Hashem in a very strong way. And you want to believe in Hashem. And that's what bothers you, actually. It bothers you because this is challenging your faith. There's a beautiful vignette that a chassid was asked by the Rebbe the Tzemach Tzedek to become a sheikhet, a ritual slaughter. And it's something that it says you have to be a Yireh Shamayim. You have to really have a lot of reverence for Hashem, and because you make the smallest mistake, nobody's going to know the difference. The meat that's kosher or not kosher doesn't look any different. Only the shochet himself will know it. And if the shochet messes up too many times, he might lose his job. So a person who's not God-fearing, it's not even between anybody else. He doesn't have to tell anybody else. You don't tell anybody. Just don't tell anybody. Don't say anything. So it says the shochet has to be Yireh Shamayim. So the Tzemach Tzedek says to this chassid he should be a shochet. And the chassid's response is, I'm afraid to be a shochet. I don't think that I have enough reverence for Hashem. I don't know if I have enough Yireh Shamayim. And the Tzemach Tzedek's purported response was, so who should be a shochet? A person who's not afraid of it? The fact that it bothers somebody that they're not believing is in and of itself the biggest proof that they believe. And there's a similar story where a person came and he said, Rebbe, I have sfeikos, I have doubts in emunah. I'm questioning God. So the Rebbe said, so? He says, what do you mean? I'm a Yid, I'm questioning God. That bothers you, said the Rebbe. He said, of course it bothers me terribly. He said, everything's just fine. If that bothers you, you're fine. So this is the opening premise, so to speak. This is where we're going to start off from. So whether we're consciously aware of it or subconsciously aware of it, there's a part of us that very strongly believes in God, believes in God's omnipotence, believes that God cares for every one of us, and because of that, we assume things should be fair, just, and right. Okay, so but is it okay for a person to ask a question like this? Is that okay? Well, guess what? The very first Jew was a man of tremendous faith. He and his wife had so much trust in God that they worshipped this God and sacrificed everything for this God, even though they never saw or heard from him or didn't have anybody to learn from. We don't know of Avraham Avinu experiencing any prophecy prior to the age of 75. That's a long time. A lot of people are retired by then. Avraham is just starting his career. And the first words that he gets from God, after a lifetime of toil, our tradition tells us Avraham Avinu began to search for God at the tender age of 3 years old. So at 3 years old, he questioned the mores of the society in which he lived. And he said, this can't be right. But that the world just exploded itself by accident and just exists, it doesn't make sense. There has to be a force, a power behind this. Maimonides tells us, he calls the Rambam an Eitan, a powerful individual. He had enormous inner strength to be able to stand up against the whole world. He didn't have a book to read from. He didn't have any kind of role model to follow. There was no history. Kivan shehischil ha'eitan hazeh l'shotet b'moches, says Rambam. He started to think. And then Rambam makes a statement. He says, Bemen ches hikir es boirei. At the age of 48, Avram recognized his creator, which leads us to say that Avraham Avinu wrestled with the idea of faith, and he reconciled and questioned, and he dealt with this all by himself. And he figured this out. I like to call it Avraham Avinu's special theory of monotheism. He worked on from age 3 to 48. For 45 years he worked on this. And then when he perfected it and he had everything down right, Avraham Avinu had written books already, and Avraham Avinu was lecturing, and he was talking about this, and eventually he was told to stop or pay the price. And Avraham Avinu refused to renounce his faith. And he was thrown into a fiery furnace and he was miraculously saved, but we don't know that God spoke to him. And he's 75 years old and he's finally getting some traction and people are finally listening. And God comes to me and says just 2 words. He says, Lech Lecha. He didn't say, thank you, Avraham. Hi, I am God. I am the God you've been looking for the last 72 years. I am the God you sacrificed for. I am the God you dedicated your life to. And I want to first tell you, thank you. It's about time somebody actually recognized me. It's about time somebody actually thought about me. I can't even tell you how much I appreciate it, God would say. And God said, because you thought of me and because I'm going to reward you and I'm going to make you a great nation. Nah, nothing like that. Where should I go? You figure it out. I'll tell you where to go. And Avram, with great faith, doesn't question. Doesn't question. The same Avram Avinu, almost 50 years later, more than 50 years later, was asked by God to do the unthinkable, the 10th and final test, which is the Akedah. And what does Avram respond? He says one word. What does he say? He says, Hineni. That's all he says. Here I am. He doesn't say, God, what did you just tell me to do? Like, how does this fit into the plan? You promised us a child. You mutchered the neshama for 25 years till you finally gave us that child. The child survived, and everybody said they're going to kill him. I had a son who tried to kill him and abuse him. I had this giant who said he was going to squash him. And the child survived, and I raised the child, and he's everything I ever wanted a child to be. And we're finally thinking of getting a shidduch for him. He's a mama's boy, but he's 37 already. We got to move him out of the house. And now you tell me I should slaughter him. Like, you got to be kidding. Avram doesn't say that. He gets instructions from Hashem. What does Avram Avinu say? One word. Hineni. In English, yes, sir. That's all. You got a commandment. Do what Hashem says. And yet, when Hashem is judging a collection of little city countries known as Sodom V'Amorah, evil people, bad people, not only did they deny God, they harmed other people. They tortured people. If you had the unfortunate luck of being a guest there, you got special hospitality. They would take you and measure you for a bed. If the bed was too big, well, they would pull your legs out of the sockets to make sure you fit the bed. If the bed was too small, well, they would just shorten your legs a little. Monsters. Torturing people. Because the person had the bad luck of not checking out, Googling where he's going before he showed up. They would torture people. There was a young girl. It's a nice girl. And somebody asked her for food. Somebody was hungry. So she had some food. So she gave him some food. I said, "Oh, it's so sweet. Sweet girl. Very nice. We give a special sweet treatment." So they stripped her. They doused her in honey. And there they left her, tied her down, and left her. And she was stung by, 1,000 bees, 10,000 bees. And she died, blood-curdling screams. And nobody cared. Nobody cared that this young girl was murdered in broad daylight because she gave somebody food. Because she did what we would say is right and just and good. And Hashem comes to Avram, and he says, Hamachas ani Avram, I'm going to hide this from Avram. I'm going to destroy these people. These are the epitome of evil. These are monsters. This is the origin of the Aryan race. What does Avram do? The same Avram that Lech Lecha, no problem, ready to go. The same Avram, God said, I want you to do this mitzvah, no problem, I'm ready to do whatever God wants. When God comes to Avram Avinu and he says that these people did bad things, that I want to destroy them, what does Avram say to God? He starts to argue with God. He says, you sure you want to do this? Sure you want to do this? Give me a Chumash Bereshis. It's the one Chumash I didn't take over here. Thank you. You have it here in the handouts. What does Avram Avinu say? The second text over here. It's last week's Torah portion. It's the very same Torah portion of the Shabbos when this terrible event happened. Parshas Vayera. Parsha of Revelation, and for us it was anything but. It was real Hester Panim. Avram Avinu says to God, Chalilu lecha ma'aseis kadavar hazeh. You got to be kidding, God. You can't do such a thing like this. Chalila, the word Chalila, Rashi says is chulin hu lecha. There's what's sacred, and then there's what's profane or mundane. If you use a telephone book, do they still make telephone books? Mm-hmm. Remember that thing called? If you use a telephone book, maybe to prop open the door or window, or is it an act of sacrilege? It's profanity? I don't know. Is that what telephone books are made for? Telephone books are made for people to sit on or to prop up a table? No, it's made to find somebody's number in ancient times. But, I'm using it for something else now. There's nothing wrong with that. How about if it's a chumash? Would that be okay? Take a chumash and prop up the table? No. Why? Because this is a sacred book. When something's designated for a sacred purpose and you use it for a mundane purpose, that would be That would be sacrilege. That would be taking something which is designated for a special purpose and using it for a mundane purpose. You could even take the religious element out of it. If somebody took a beautiful dress, a beautiful suit, and used it as a rag to clean the furniture, you'd say, "What are you, a lunatic? What are you doing? This is a beautiful a beautiful garment. Why are you ruining it? Why are you destroying it? This is meant to wear. You want shmatas? Go get a shmata. Go get an old piece of cloth." So chulin, chalila lecha, which we say chalila or chas v'shalom, this is where it comes from. Chalila means chulin lecha, Rashi says. This is not appropriate for God. I expect people to behave like this. God should behave like this? God should just strike down a whole city? If there's a bad person should pay the price. A whole country should just be turned upside down? A whole municipality, a region should just disappear? Chalila, how could such a thing be? It's chulin lecha. Yoimru, they're going to say, this is God's craft, this is his profession. Sheitif hakol. He's an unfair, unjust God. He just destroys everything. Tzadikim, Rishoyim, the righteous, the wicked. Hamabel, says Rashi, that's what you did to the flood generation. L'deira haflaga, to the generation of dispersion. It wasn't a detailed, like what they would call a surgical strike. It was mass casualties. That's a thing for God to do. It's when the Allies had to bomb Dresden and they burned the hospital. Okay, what are you going to do? Well, the Allies had a choice. The surgical strikes weren't a possibility. It was either that or the Nazis were going to take over the world. Nobody's going to say that's immoral. Well, it's casualties of war. It's unfortunate. Sorry. We're sorry. But God should behave like that? Number one, Avram knows that God couldn't do differently. Number one. Number two, he should do differently. Number three, how could God not care? It's chulin lecha. I'm asking a simple question. This is the same man who, when God told him, pick yourself up and go to I don't know where, uproot everything you've done, and Avram doesn't say a word. He doesn't even get a speaking part. You know that story, the little boy came home. He says, Mama. I said, what? I'm so excited. I got a part in the school play. And the mother said, I'm so happy. What's your part? He says, I'm going to be the husband. She says, ugh, I thought you were going to get a speaking part. Avram doesn't even get a speaking part. He just acts. He doesn't say a word. God says to him, Lech lecha. And Avram, Vayelech Avram. All he doesn't get not one word. It's like the man doesn't have a mouth. God does all the speaking. Avram just does. And then when he has to, God says to him, go take your son and bring him onto a mountain and get rid of him. Avram has one word to say. And that is, Hineni. Suddenly, when it comes to the city of Sodom, bad people, wicked people, terrible people, what the Western world would call terrible people, all of a sudden say, hey, Avram says, 1 second, God. This is the Chalila. You can't just do this. What, are you just going to destroy everybody? Just turn the whole place over? You're treating the righteous and the wicked alike? This is sacrilege. This is how people behave. This is not a godlike thing to do. How could you do this, God? Avram Avinu thunders. The judge of the whole world doesn't act in a way of justice? How could you do that? Like the police officer doesn't stop for the red light? You got to be kidding. You are the source of justice. How could you not be just? I'm asking you a simple question. How do you reconcile? Like, what happened to Avram? And don't tell me he got midlife crisis, because this story is right in the middle. There was no paradigm shift. Before this, he's dutiful. After this, he's dutiful. When it comes to Sodom, suddenly he finds a mouth. And now he's arguing. And God, by the way, is not angry at Avram. He doesn't reprimand Avram and say, Avram, last time I checked, you didn't know how to speak. Now all of a sudden you're acting up with me. It's almost like God wanted to see this from Avram. Do you know that the Navi calls the Mabul, the waters of the Mabul, Mei Noach, the waters of Noach? Genocidal, destructive waters. That's not fair. Poor Noach. He was on this floating barge. Took him 120 years to build, all by himself. Took care of all the animals. His kishkas were imploding. He was coughing blood. He tried to do everything for everybody. Tried to be everything for everybody. His own kids later abused him. Poor man. You call him Mein Noach? Can he get some credit? So the Medrash says, not like Avraham. Avraham Avinu, when he heard people going to get punished, what did he do? He prayed for the people. And you said, okay. God said, I'm going to destroy the world. Allah said, okay. I'm going to destroy the world. Okay. I mean, you're God, you know what you're doing. That's a problem. Why? I mean, Noach's just doing what you're supposed to do. There's a beautiful story told about a chassid of the Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Rebbe of Lubavitch, Rabbi Shmuel. That this chassid came from wherever he was, and the Rebbe asked about a particular individual who had suffered a tremendous setback in his business. Factory burned down, and there was no insurance those days. Terrible. Like, it was debt, overwhelming debt. And the Rebbe asks about this person. The person says, it's very bad, it's a big rachmanas. And he says, no, Hashem knows what he's doing. Hashem knows what he's doing. So, and the Rebbe's face darkened. The Rebbe said, Hashem knows what he's doing? Yeah. He says, yeah. Okay. Anyway, this chassid goes home. And all of a sudden, his charmed life is not so charmed anymore. And one problem after another, and he's in very hot water. Very, very serious problems. He's now being accused by the government, and this is a monarchy, of theft, of deceit. I mean, they can go to a firing squad for this. And he got back on the train and ran back to Lubavitch, and he came to the Rebbe's study, and Rebbe, help me, do something for me, pray for me, give me a blessing. I got a wife, I got children. And the Rebbe looked at him and he said, didn't you say God knows what he's doing? And the chassid understood. And he said, give me a shovel. How do I dig myself out? The Rebbe said, you go take care of that chassid, that fellow who lost everything. When you'll take care of that fellow, then Hashem will take care of you. And he came to this person and he said, I want a loan. He says, I heard you have problems. Don't worry, you take care of your problems. And the guy was practically begging. He says, please, I'm begging you, let me help you. He couldn't tell him the Rebbe said he should help him. Until finally he accepted a little bit of help. And in the end, Baruch Hashem, the story is how they both turned around. And the Rebbe Mash later explained to this person that when you see somebody else suffering, you're never allowed to say that, oh, that's okay. God knows what he's doing. When somebody else suffers, you have to scream, Rebbeinu Shalom, how could this be? How could this be? Not because you're smarter than God. Not because you believe that God doesn't know as smart, he's not as smart, doesn't know as well as you know. Because as a mensch, as a person with a heart, when you see somebody suffer, it has to bother you. Avram's response is actually the correct response. When you hear of human suffering, your reaction has to be Chalilulacha, Rebbeinu Shalom, what's going on over here? I'm going to share with you a personal story, an incredible story. When I was a yeshiva bacher in Los Angeles, going back some 20, almost 30 years already, there was 27, 28 years, there was a fellow who I had a chavrusa with every afternoon. He's a very unusual man. His name was Yankel Kornwasser. He had spent a few years in Auschwitz. He went to Auschwitz when he was 17 years old. His father was a Radomsker chassid, very wealthy family, extremely wealthy family, very close to the Radomsker Rebbe. And I think out of a family of 11, I think just him and one brother survived the war. And he rebuilt himself. He came to the United States with one of these proverbial stories with $5 in his pocket. When I knew him, he was a multi-millionaire. He was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He would dress like a schlepper. Well, that was his shtick. And I value the time I spent. That was one of the most precious times that, first of all, we learned together. We learned Torah together. But he told me so many stories. He shared with me his experiences. Stories before the war, stories on the concentration camp. So it's 1992, and it was a terrible event that happened in Brooklyn, in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn. There was a young mother who came home from a shopping trip, and there was an intruder in the house, and the mother was stabbed to death. Awful event. In the middle of a broad daylight in Brooklyn, it was a terrible event. Terrible. Family, children. Terrible event. The Rebbe went to the Levaya. I mean, you see the pictures, the pain on the Rebbe's face is just unbelievable. And the Rebbe spoke a sicha. When at the end of the Shiva, the Rebbe delivered a talk in honor of this woman. Her name was Esther Lapine. So in the Beis Medrash. We were in Los Angeles, a few hours behind. It was the middle of the afternoon, and suddenly the Rebbe is speaking. The Rebbe is speaking, so right away, in today's day and age, everybody would have a camera like this. And those, in ancient times, they would hook up with the phone. And what would happen is that most of the boys in the high school didn't speak Yiddish. So a number of us, older boys, would have a group of boys around us, and we would give a simultaneous translation. So I was standing at the bima, and Mr. Kornwasser was there, this Auschwitz survivor, short little man standing next to me. And a whole bunch of boys clustered around the bima, gathered around me. And I was translating the Sikha, live, simultaneously. As the Rebbe was speaking Yiddish, I'm translating. It was a very emotionally charged talk. And you could hear the pain and anguish in the Rebbe's voice. And the Rebbe spoke about, faith in Mashiach, and he said, and it's possible that these children will grow up, and Mashiach still won't be, it's conceivable, and they'll have to grow up without a mother. And the Rebbe, you heard the pain in his voice. And he was like arguing with Hashem. He was like saying, how could this be? How could the God let such a thing happen? And he invoked what Moshe Rabbeinu said, Lam hara'ei salam hazeh. And it was like, we felt like the Rebbe was talking to the Eibishter. The Rebbe was publicly airing his grievances, almost like he was so upset. And I'm translating the Sikha, and at the corner of my eye, I catch sight of Mr. Kornwasser, and I see he's trembling. I see he's shaking. And I didn't know how to gauge. I don't know what he was. So after the Sikha was over, he looked at me with tears coming down his face. And I didn't know how he was going to accept what the Rebbe said. It was this was very Chalilu L'cha, Lama Hara'ei Salah. This was like Moshe Rabbeinu, like Avraham Avinu. The Rebbe was he was really pouring his pain out before Hashem. And I thought he was going to say, how could the Rebbe talk like that? That's what I thought he was going to say. And he said to me, he said, Mendel, Rebbe, it's a real Rebbe. He's a real Rebbe. I said, your Rebbe, he's a real Rebbe. He's the real deal. He said to me like this. He said, when I was a boy in Poland, there was Rebbes and Gitte Yidden. Polish, a Yid, a Gitte Yid, a good Yid, a good Jew. Good Jews and Rebbes. And he asks me, what's the difference between a Gitte Yid and between a Rebbe? I don't know. I said, I don't know. I thought Gitte Yid is a Polish expression for Rebbe. He says, I tell you. A Gitte Yid, whatever the Eibishter does, he says, Git. People suffer, Git. Everything is Git. Alles, was the Eibishter tit is Git. Git. He said, that's not a Rebbe. A Rebbe, when he sees Yidden suffering, a Rebbe bangs on the table, he said to me. A Rebbe screams, how could this be? Why are Yidden suffering? He says, your Rebbe is not a Gitte Yid. Your Rebbe is a Rebbe. He understood. This is not a lack of faith, chas v'shalom. This is not any weakness in faith. This is what a Torah Yid is supposed to do. When you see somebody suffer, it's supposed to bother you. If it doesn't bother you, you got a problem. It doesn't mean you have more faith. It means you have no heart. You see somebody suffering and you don't shed a tear and you don't care. You say, I guess that's what God wanted. I'm sorry you're suffering, but that's what Hashem wanted for you. A person like that is not a person of faith. He's a person of indifference. And the funny thing is, God forbid, it happens to him, all of a sudden he has a different perspective. You know what they say? What's the difference between surgery and a procedure? A procedure gets done on somebody else. When it's you, it's a different story. And this is how the first Jew showed us. When it came time for him to do a mitzvah, when it came time for Avraham Avinu to listen to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, if it was the Akedah, he didn't protest for a moment. Vayashkim Avraham ba'boker, he was up early in the morning, there was no questions. But when it came to the suffering of another person, a sodomite, a monster, a person who violates human rights, and a person who brings pain and torture, a society that's profoundly rotten. And Avraham Avinu's, this is not okay. Chalil alacha. And he remonstrates and argues, and in the end, Avraham tries, and he was supposed to do that. He's supposed to do that. Let's take a look at another very, very famous Jew. You can open your Chumash. I gave you, everybody does a Chumash, you see the Chumash. The book of Exodus. Another very, very famous Jew who also has really his first prophecy, if you will. Or the first time he sees God, he's not 75, but he's actually 80 years old. He's the greatest tzaddik of all time. The biggest prophet ever to walk the face of the earth. I talked to you about Moses. Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu's first experience, first prophetic experience, is at age 80. That's when God appears to Moshe. And what happens when he appears to Moshe? He comes in a burning bush. And what does God say to Moshe? He says to Moshe sees this burning bush, chapter 3, Exodus chapter 3. And he sees this angel. And he says, what's going on over here? There's a raging fire, but the bush is not being consumed. I have to take a look at this. I have to see what this is. And all of a sudden, he hears the voice of God. And God says to Moshe, calls his name Moshe, Moshe. Moshe says, Hineni, just like Avram. I'm right here. I'm right here. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, now take your shoes off. This is sacred place. The Rebbe explains that shoes are made to protect us, to make a distance. The soul makes a distance between your feet and the ground. But this is holy ground. Here you don't want a distance. Here you don't want a separation. Here you want to be as close to the ground as possible because this is holy ground. This is a place that's right now housing the presence of Hashem. And God introduces himself to Moshe. And he says, I am the God of your father. I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Moshe is afraid to look. At the level where Moshe was, with his righteousness and his tzidkis, Moshe is a very righteous man. We know he's a righteous man. How do we know he's a righteous man? Because he saw somebody being abused. He saw somebody being hurt. What did he do? The first time he got rid of him. He saw a monster. He swiftly administered justice. He risked his own life, and he almost got killed because of it. That's scene 1, act 1. That's the first time we get introduced to Moshe. When he goes to care about other people. He sees other people suffering. He goes out of his comfort zone. He goes out of the palace. He sees people suffering. And he feels their suffering. And he feels their pain. And he wants to see what he can do to help them. And then he sees a particularly bad individual who's tormenting somebody. And he does what has to be done. Scene 2. What do we hear about Moshe next? He sees a group of women who are being abused. A group of women who are being ridiculed. They're the daughters of the high priest, the Pope, or Dalai Lama of the day, who reneged on his own faith and his own followers. And now they're busy abusing these women. And they don't let them come and get water from the well. What does Moshe do? He defends them. Who were you, stranger? You just showed up at the well and all of a sudden you're defending. He fights for the underdog. Scene 2. What's scene 3? Scene 3, now he's worried about sheep. Because if that's his charge, he has to worry about the sheep. And he chases one sheep, the Medrash says, before this for 3 days. And God says, a person who can worry about a single solitary sheep for 3 days, that's my Moshe Rabbeinu. So now God shows himself to Moshe. Moshe is afraid to look at God. And what does God say to him? God says to him, Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, chapter 3, verse 7, he says, I have seen the deprivation of my nation. I see the deprivation. Unkala says it means the bondage of my nation. Reb Saadia Gaon interprets it as the weakness. The weakness. Ibn Ezra says the abuse. I've seen what my nation is going through. And not only I saw what my nation is going through, but God says, I heard their cries. I heard the cries, the negs of the people who are their taskmasters. I know his pain. Okay, God hears the cries. Here's the cries. Reb Chaim says, they're crying out to me. They're crying out to me. I hear the cries. And so God intones, I'm going to save these people. I'm going to release them. I'm going to take them, bring them to this wonderful, fantastic land, this place where there's flowing milk and honey, and they're going to take Mokim HaKnani. They'll take the place that doesn't say Eretz HaKnani, it says Mokim. Nachmanides Ramban says they'll take the place of the Canaanites. You're not going to live amongst the Canaanites. The Canaanites are now occupying this land. They will be removed, and instead, the Jewish people are going to come back home to the land of Canaan, the land they gave to Avraham Avinu. They're going to be in Mokim Knani. Okay, very nice. So what do you want from me? Moshe's thinking, right? And now that the cries have pierced the heavens, I heard the cries, I've seen the duress and the suffering. So now, verse 10, God says, so this is what, like Moshe doesn't say it, but like he must have been thinking, so what do you want from me? Why are you telling me all this? The Bnei Shalom says, you are going to go to the Pharaoh. You are going to be my messenger. And you are going to say, you're going to take my people out of Egypt. So what does Moshe say? The Moshe that said, Hineni. What does Moshe? He says, are you kidding? Me anochi. Who am I to go to the Pharaoh? I can't go to the Pharaoh. Rashbam says, Moshe said two things. And from where he says, I'm not a guy who can go to the Pharaoh. He'll laugh me out. I don't want to know what to do over there. Number two, I'm going to take the Jewish people out. I'm not going to be popular anywhere, he says. I'm not going to have friends in the palace or with these people. Nobody's going to listen to me. The palace, I ran away as a child. I'm actually a convict. There's a death sentence hanging over my head. The people, I ran away from them. They never even knew me. I grew up a privileged child in a palace while they were busy suffering. How's this going to work? Nobody's ever going to listen to me. And what does God say to Moshe? Oh, don't you worry about it. What do you think? I'm sending you on your own? I'm going with you. And then he gives him a sign. He gives him a sign. What's the sign? You'll be back at this mountain. Because the whole purpose of going out of Mitzrayim, nowhere in the Torah does it say, let my people go free. That's only what it says in the script that Charlton Heston read. It says, Shalach Ami v'ya'avduni. Set forth my nation so they will serve me. Where will they serve me? At this mountain. When they get a Torah. And the Torah is going to be marching orders. They're going to serve me from this mountain. And Moshe says, so let me understand this. Verse 13. Vayem Moshe Elokim. Okay. Let's play the scene out. Hini anochi bo b'nei Yisrael. I'm going to come to the Jewish people. V'yamarti aleim, I'm going to say, Elokei Avosechem, the God of your father. He said, God of your fathers has sent me. V'amru li, and they're going to say, really? Mashmai, what's his name? And Moshe says, Ma oimer aleim. So what should I say to them? What? You asked the question, how am I going to do this job? God answered you. He said, because I'm going to be with you. So Moshe said, I just realized I have another problem. And what exactly is the problem now? When I come to the people, and I'm going to say, Elokei Avosechem, the God of your fathers, they are, after all, Yiddish Kinder. The Jewish children, they have a history. They know they come. They heard stories. There was an Abraham, an Isaac, and a Jacob. Not always were we a slave, a downtrodden people. Once upon a time, we were a distinguished family. We had an uncle and a grandfather was a viceroy. So the God of that Abraham, that Isaac, that Jacob, that Shvatim, that God, he sent me to you. Moshe says, I can't do that, because you know what's going to happen. They're going to say, what's his name? And then what will I say to them? What is going on over here? What will I say to them? If that's the problem, Moshe should just say, no problem. Just tell me, please, what name should I use for you? Moshe doesn't say that. He says, I can't do this because they're going to ask me your name, and then when you ask me your name, then there's going to be issues over here. So the Mefarshim struggle with this. Ramban says, Moshe wanted to know, tell me what kind of mission is this going to be? Like a kamikaze mission? Am I coming in like just waiting for the ceiling to collapse on me? Am I going to have miracles? Is going to be like plague? What kind of mission? Because the different names of God, this Kel Shin Daled Yud, and then the Shem Havaya, different names of God represent the different ways. There's a God of nature. The same God makes the sun rise and the sun set. The same God makes it rain. The same God makes the leaves turn colors and fall off in the fall. And the same God is split open the Red Sea and had fire and ice coming down from the heavens. What's the difference between the two? One is nature, which is called Shem Elokim, and one is miracles, Shem Havai, Yud Kivavke. So Moshe said, what kind of mission is this going to be? Are you going to be like Avraham Avinu coming to Israel, and then they're going to throw him out, and they're going to have tests now? You're going to test me now? Test me like 10 tests till it works out? Or no, this is like, now, 200 years of suffering is enough, especially 80 years of pure hell, and now I'm coming in, and that's the question. I mean, of course, the problem is that the issue then is not, they're going to ask me your name. Actually, Moshe is saying, please tell me your name. But he doesn't say that. He says, they're going to ask me your name. Rabbeinu Bechaya, kind of picking up where Ramban leaves off, he says, I need to know your essence, God, so then I'll understand your miracles. Then I'll understand. Then I can be a messenger. But both Ramban and Rabbeinu Bechaya are speaking about Moshe's seeming lack of knowledge. His desire to have a better understanding of this God who's about to send him. But Moshe doesn't say that. When you read the pasuk, it says, "Amru li." They're going to say to me, "Mashmoi." What is his name? What should I say to them? Now, God has 7 names, in case you didn't know. Sheva Shemai She'enon Nimchakim. 7 names which a Jew is not allowed to erase. Yud Kivavke, and Elokim, and Adnai, and Kel. 7 names. Which of the 7 names does God give Moshe now? No name. This is like shopping in no frills now. No name. A no name. Vayomer Elokim el Moshe. My name. When they ask for my name, my calling card, tell them Eya. Eya Asher Eya. I will be what I will be. That's a name? No, it doesn't say it's a name of God. No, it doesn't say it's one of God's names. It's not we don't say Baruch Atah Hashem Eya. We don't say that. What he asked, say Eya Shlachani Aleichem. This is what you tell the Jew. What happened over here? What's going on over here? There's a lot to talk about. I could fill the next 2 hours with just this discussion, but I'm going to share with you, I'm going to go straight to the cut to the chase. I'm going to share with you the way the Rebbe explained this. And I want to tell you that when the Rebbe delivered this talk in the early 80s, he wept profoundly to the point that he was choked up with tears. At some point, he couldn't continue speaking. The Rebbe said that when we say a name of God, it's a euphemism. Like the Shmos Rabbah says in the 3rd chapter, Lefi Maasai ani nikra. I'm called by accordance with how I act. A metaphor. A person's a doctor. What does it mean, a doctor? A doctor, he does what doctors do. You expect him to behave like a doctor. He's a firefighter. You expect this man and woman to be a firefighter. The names we call people, that shows you what your relationship is, what they're doing now. When I get a call and they want to know about cleaning my ducts, and they ask, is Mr. Kaplan home? I know right away they don't know who it is. Tell them I have no ducts. How could you not have ducts? Oh yeah, I can't explain it. Leave me alone. You know the way somebody calls you. People have a name for a spouse, the same name. It could be the same Moshe. His children call him one name. His wife calls him another name. His father calls him a different name. His boss calls him another name. The people who work for him, oh boy, do they have a name for him. Everybody calls him a name. Name is indicative of the relationship. So the Rebbe said, Moshe Rabbeinu said like this, basically. I'm going to come to the Jewish people, and I'm going to say, God loves you. God cares about you. God has heard your cries, and He wants to rescue you. And He sent me as your superhero in a cape. And I am going to rescue you now. Because God loves you and cares about you. And He can do this. And what are the people going to say? He loves us? Where was He last week when they took my baby and slaughtered him so the Pharaoh could bathe in his blood? Where was He last year when they took an infant from my hands and stuffed him into a pyramid because I didn't have enough bricks to fill the quota? Where was He when so-and-so's grandmother was crushed under the weight of the straw and the Egyptian taskmasters crushed her skull? Where was He then? What, now He woke up to think about me? You're living in the Warsaw Ghetto, Auschwitz-like conditions for 80 years. For 80 years. And it gets worse every week. Mashmai. Tell me about this God. Tell us, Moshe. I would like to know about this God. It's a very powerful question. Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, I'm being sent on a mission impossible. You want me to come to tell people about God? You want me to be their rabbi? You want me to inspire them? You want me to tell them God loves you? How am I going to do this? They're not going to accept that. So what's God's answer? God's answer is Eya. What does Eya mean? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, you know what that means, Eya? Eya Asher Eya? Rashi says the following. Eya imam b'tzara zois. I will be with them. I'm with them in their suffering. I'm with them in their pain. Asher eya imam b'shibud shar malchias. And I'm going to be with them when they suffer in the future. And the Medrash fills in the words there. And Rashi quotes this and he says, Amar lefanav. Moshe Rabbeinu said before God, Rabbeinu Shalom, you got to be kidding. They're busy suffering in Mitzrayim, and now I should tell them about the next Golos? Go to a person suffering and say, don't worry, God's with you. And next time you suffer, He's going to be with you too. How could I don't even know how to deal with this sorrow, with this pain. You want me to tell them about other pain? God says, Yafa Marta, this doesn't say, Eya Ashrei, I'll be with them again. Just say, Eya Shlachani Aleichem. What does Eya mean? Eya means I'm with you. We don't understand We don't understand. Where was God in Auschwitz? What's the answer? In Auschwitz. So why did he do something then? How did he let 6 million Jews get slaughtered? Why did he do something? And here's where the Rebbe started to cry. We don't have the answer to that question. We don't understand the ways of God. Nistarim Daki Hashem. We don't know. We don't know why God does what he does. But we do know that he's always with us.
You know what? I didn't hear you.
We do know that he is always with us. The person of faith that questions and cries out, Rabbeinu Shalom, he's crying out not because he doesn't believe, because he does believe. The person is crying because he believes that there is a God, and that God cares about him, and that God loves him. And that's why it's so painful. That's why it wouldn't be painful if there's no God. Why should I have pain for him? In Harold Kushner's book, he had a very simple solution. Don't be angry at God, he's helpless. That's heresy. That's terrible. I mean, it helped him. I'm sorry to hear that, but that's not an answer. That's not what the classical Jewish texts tell us, that God is not omnipotent, chas v'shalom. The Eibishter could do everything he wants. That's why we're upset. So what's the answer? I don't have an answer. But I believe that God is with me. And I believe that there's a purpose. And I believe that even though I don't understand it, in ways that I can't fathom, ultimately, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves me. So, like I shared with you recently, I heard this from Eli Wiesel himself. I asked Eli Wiesel, tell me when you were by the Rebbe. You asked the Rebbe, how could one believe in God? And Eli Wiesel said, yes, I asked the Rebbe that. And I said, what did the Rebbe tell you? And he said, the Rebbe said to me, how could you not believe in God? And he said to me, I asked the Rebbe, how could you believe in God after the Holocaust? And the Rebbe said, how could you not believe in God after the Holocaust? In other words, he said, the Rebbe wasn't giving me an answer, he said to me, Eli Wiesel. He said, if it was an answer, I don't accept it, but I don't believe it was an answer. The Rebbe's answer to my question was another question. And he said to me, and that's the only answer. It's not an explanation. If these people, Meshugoyim, they give you explanations for the Holocaust. They're just cold, indifferent people. They just don't care. There's no menschlichkeit. Nobody could see that and give explanations. So how did it happen? We don't know. Why did it happen? I have no idea. But I live with the faith that what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does, ultimately, somehow, in ways inexplicable, is for the best. And I cling to my faith. And I know that somehow with my faith, I'm able to get through the darkest of times. And that's what Eli Wiesel was saying. He said, that's what the Rebbe told me. And Eli Wiesel was a believing Jew. He was a Yid with a big heart and a big soul. And he had all the pain. He carried all that pain. When Rabbi Lau was here last year, he said to me, people always ask me, where was God? You're a Holocaust survivor. You were in Buchenwald. You almost died. Where was God when you were in the camps? He says, I don't understand. He asked people back, why don't you ask where was humanity? Where was the United States? Where was Canada? That doesn't bother you, he says. That bothers me, okay? He says, that's what bothers me. You leave my faith alone. I have faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm bothered with the question, where was humanity? That's what I'm bothered with. And somehow nobody asked that question. They're always attacking, where was God? That doesn't mean because we understand it. It doesn't mean because it makes sense to us. It doesn't mean because we can rationalize it. That's inhuman. Did Avraham Avinu rationalize it when God came along and said, I'm going to kill Saddam? He goes, oh, no problem, God. Do as you please. Did Moshe Rabbeinu say, go ahead? Moshe Rabbeinu said, Mashmai. And what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's answer? There is no answer. There is none. Because at the end of the day, it's impossible for the human mind to fathom HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what is faith? People say seeing is believing. I think that's pretty stupid, because to me, seeing is seeing. If seeing is believing, what is seeing? Seeing is not hearing. Seeing is not tasting. Seeing is not touching. Seeing is none of those. Seeing is seeing, hearing is hearing, touching is touching, understanding is understanding. Arithmetic I understand. Scrambled eggs I eat. Music I listen to. Aromas I sniff. Not high stuff, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I believe. What's belief? Belief is how the neshama expresses itself. Belief is a certitude, this all-pervasive knowledge that there is a God and He loves me. In fact, I can't figure out what He's doing, but I know that He loves me. And that brings me comfort. I can't explain it. I can't explain it. It brought me comfort a few years ago when I was holding my dead son. It brought me comfort that I know that I don't understand it, and I was very frustrated and angry and hurt, but there's a purpose. I can't understand the purpose, but the purpose. I wasn't going to let the baby just be it till I held him till the Chaver Kedusha came. I held him. I sang to him. And there's a purpose. It's a purpose. I don't know what the purpose is. I was able to deal with it with faith, not without faith. Without faith, I'll go crazy. Why does things like that happen? What did people be tormented for? I don't know the answer. You see, they once asked the Alter Rebbe, they said, if you were God, what would you do? The Alter Rebbe said, if I was God, I would do exactly what God does. And the questioner said, Rebbe, you agree with the sick children, with the poor widows, with all the suffering. What do you mean you would do what God does? Alter Rebbe said, no. You asked if I was God. I would do things very differently, he said. If I was God, God is perfect. So why do we express frustration? Not because, chas v'shalom, we express frustration that we're questioning God, that we're saying we're smarter than God, chas v'shalom. We believe that God could do things differently, and we believe God can do as He pleases, and He knows what He's doing. I don't know what He's doing. And incidentally, you can always accept tziduk hadin as a thing a person has to accept upon himself, but never when somebody else suffers. When somebody else suffers, you show compassion. When somebody else suffers, your heart breaks. When somebody else suffers, you cry out to the Rebbeinu Shalom. You say, how could this be? Take a look in the next little text we're going to read. We'll go from Avraham Avinu. We're going to go to the end of Deuteronomy. The end of Chumash Devarim. The end of Chumash Devarim, it's talking about bad stuff, terrible stuff happening to people. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, V'chora api. You don't have, in chapter 31 of Deuteronomy, verse 17. V'chora api voy bayemahu. My anger will flare, v'azavtim, and I will abandon him, v'histarte ponim, and I'll hide my face from them. And then what will happen? And then, umatza'u rois rabis v'tzoros, many bad, terrible things will happen. V'amar bayemahu will say on that day, haloi al ki'ein elikai b'kirbi. God is not with me. He's not amongst me. Mitza'uni rois hel. That's where all these bad things happen. In other words, this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu describing typical human reaction to suffering. What's a person going to say? Where's God? Where's God? The Rambam in Mer Nevuchim says that you know why all this is happening? Precisely because you're not looking for God. He says God doesn't hide us. You hide yourself from God. But this is God, not God describing a sin. This is God describing the natural progression of things. The natural progression of things would say, well, where is God? When a Yid questions where's God, it's not because he doesn't believe. He does believe in God. He believes God's hiding his face from him. Why is God hiding his face from me, a Yid says. And Rashi says, V'histarte part, it doesn't mean I actually hide my face. As if I don't see the tzaras. And the Rebbe once explained this Rashi, and he says that ultimately, that this, like working it through the system, and where is God, and how could this be? Ultimately, this brings us home to Hashem. Because the problem was, before all these things happened, we didn't even think about God. And now all of a sudden we're saying, where's God? So this makes us think. And this makes us work issues through. So ultimately, it has to bring us closer to Hashem. And in strange ways, sometimes suffering does bring us closer to Hashem. And in strange ways, sometimes it does fortify our faith. And the official narrative is that after the Holocaust, nobody believed. But all the Holocaust survivors I knew had great faith. All of them. My grandparents had great faith. The Bianca had great faith. They all had great faith. Much greater faith than we did. How? I don't know how. We honored the Holocaust survivors of our shul, everybody remembers a few years ago. And I did a documentary. I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I was going to interview each one. I wrote up a list of questions. I had no idea how it was going to turn out. And from the one who expressed the least faith to the one who expressed the most faith, everybody expressed faith. To everybody, Yiddishkeit was important. That Yidden should live forever was important. They took pride in whatever Yiddishkeit their family had. There was no expression of lack of faith. There was extraordinary courage and strength. You know, there was a great prophet. His name is Yirmiyahu. You know that Jeremiah, he even gets, I'm going to skip to text 5, he even gets a special name in the English word for him. Ever hear of a Jeremiad? A Jeremiad? A person who kvetches all the time. It's Yirmiyahu Nebuch. He wasn't, he saw so much suffering. Right? So much suffering. He's the author of Lamentations and Megillah Seicha. Yirmiyahu, in the beginning of the 12th chapter, he says the most amazing thing. Listen carefully, my friends, because this really sums up everything we talked about tonight. He says, Tzadik ato Hashem. You're righteous, God. Well, you're righteous. What God righteous? He does all the mitzvahs. He listens to instructions. Righteous means you're right. You're right. You're right, God. Ki orav elecha. What does that mean? You're right, God. Ki orav elecha. So here's how the Metzudas David puts it. He says, Omar Hanovi, the prophet Jeremiah said, Yodaiti Hashem sha'ata tzadik bedavar asher orav elecha. I know that you're right. This thing, I'm going to contend with you. I'm going to lock horns now with you, God, says the prophet. I know you're right. I know you're right. But, mishpatim adaber. I'm still going to argue with you. I know you're right. But I'm still going to argue. What's a mishpatim? Metzudas Sion says, inyan vikuach. I'm going to argue with you. I'm not going to accept this. I'm not going to take it lying down. Achadaber imcha. Says Metzudas David, I'm going to talk to you. Adaber, incidentally, the word is used in Hebrew, it means tough talk. Amira is soft spoken. Adaber is tough. I'm going to be tough. I'm going to be aggressive. Divrei vikuach, I'm going to argue with you. Uka'oimer, it's as if, says the Metzudas, Im kol zeh esvakeach. Despite this all, I am going to argue with you. L'mandas es hatam v'asiba. Because I need to have rhyme and reason. I need to have resolution. Lo yala yosem misupa kim tzadik ata bedincha. Not because I have doubts if God is right or wrong. Not because Jeremiah says I'm smarter than you, chas v'shalom. It's Yirmiyahu Hanavi. One of the greatest Jews that ever walked the face of the earth. The prophet Yirmiyahu says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I know you're right. But because you're right doesn't mean that I can daven, and I can plead, and I can be frustrated, and I can be angry, and say, the Ben Yishalaylam, how could this happen? Why should this be? What is he going to say? Madura derech reshoyim tzleicha. Why are the wicked prospering? Nebuchadnezzar is a beast, a monster, slaughtered millions of Jews, and he's laughing all the way to the bank. Shalu kol beigdei vaged. What's shalu? Shalu means peace. Lashon shalva, says Metzudas Sion. It's peace and tranquil. For these evildoers, this is the big question. Why do bad, wicked people prosper? And why do good, righteous people suffer? What's the answer? God is right. Yirmiyahu says, I know that. But I'm still going to argue with you. And I'm still going to storm the heavens. And I'm still going to plead. And I'm still going to beg. That doesn't mean, chas v'shalom, that Yirmiyahu or Avraham Avinu or Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't do what the Eibishter wants, doesn't listen to exactly what the mitzvahs are. Of course, whatever Hashem says, hineni, akeda, no problem. But chalil alacha, how could it be? This is, mamish, Yirmiyahu sums up the essence of the Jewish attitude. Yes, we do question. Not because we're going to draw, chas v'shalom, our own conclusions. These are not cerebral questions. These are not intellectual questions. These are not a question, is there a God, is there not a God? These are emotional questions. This is a cry from the heart. And no amount of rhyme or reason will ever be able to bring soothing to a heart that's in pain. Because it's an emotional question. That's what Yirmiyahu Hanavi is saying. We don't have the answers, my friends. We don't have the answers. What we do have to know is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us. And that's what that famous chapter of Tillim is. You know, everybody knows it. You heard it at every funeral. Unfortunately, it's actually a nice chapter of Tillim. It has beautiful messages, but it has a sharp message. Bizmil David, Hashem roi, lo yechser. What does that mean? David HaMelech says that I look at myself like a sheep. A sheep, says Ibn Ezra, the sheep knows that his shepherd gives him what he needs. That's what it is, Mizmor LeDavid. When it's Mizmor LeDavid, David HaMelech wasn't inspired. LeDavid Mizmor, he was inspired. He was in a state of prophetic intuition. Mizmor LeDavid means he first sang a song. He was in pain. He was anguished. He expressed himself. He poured his soul forth to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mizmor LeDavid. And he said, I know you're my shepherd. I know you're going to lead me in the green pastures and you're going to put me in menuchas and the still waters. I know all these things. Gam begeit salmavas. I walk in the shadow of death. I'm not going to be afraid. Why? Why? Why not? Why not? I'm in the shadow of death. Why isn't it bad? What's David HaMelech's comfort? Ki ato imadi. Because you're with me. When Rabbi Mendel was here, the youngest survivor of Auschwitz a few years ago, he said the one thing that always stuck in his head, that his father once told him a story on Friday night of a Yid whose wife went into labor in the middle of the night and he had to go through a forest to go get a doctor. And he was afraid to go in the forest. And the refrain of the story is, a Yid is came nicht allein, the Jew is never alone. And with this faith that Hashem was with him, he went through the forest, came back with the doctor, and the baby was born. And he said, this is what stayed in his head in the camps. This is what kept him alive in Auschwitz. A Yid is never alone. And he felt Hashem's presence. And this is what David HaMelech said. I'm begeit salmavas. He is in the shadow of death. He's the valley of death. But ata yimadi. I'm not going to lose it. Because the Yid knows that Hashem is with him. Is that an answer? Well, not in the typical sense. Typical sense is that you have a question and you have an answer. We don't have any answers. Nobody has answers. Who could be so arrogant to tell you they know why an innocent person has to suffer? Who could be such a fool to tell you why a woman could survive the Holocaust and come to freedom, and at the age of 97, the last thing in the world she should hear is Jews have to die? Who could be such a fool to try to explain that? What's the answer? What's the response? How do we cope? The answer is we look deeper inside ourselves. The answer is we focus more on our faith. And the question you have to ask ourselves also is, this David HaMelech says, Lo ma'azavtani, why did you abandon me? The Psham Shofar Hirsch once said, read it different. Lema, for what purpose azavtani? It's got to be a purpose. We have to make this purposeful. That's the bigger question that we have to ask. What can we walk away from all this with that will be purposeful? How can we redirect ourselves? How can we refocus ourselves? How can we recommit ourselves? How can we give this purpose? It doesn't mean we're okay with it, chas v'shalom. It doesn't mean we're rationalizing it. It doesn't mean that we're smoothing it away and say, it's all fine, smooth it over. No, it's jagged, it's painful, it hurts, it's life, but I still will find purpose in it. When you find purpose, when those 5 school children were slain with their teacher in Kfar Chabad in 1956, so the Rebbe wrote, first the Rebbe was in his room for 3 days. And then, while this was happening, the Rebbe was weeping at the Farbrengen, and nobody knew why. The news hadn't come yet. And the Rebbe sent him a simple telegram. And the telegram he wrote, Behemshech habeniya tinochemu. See, this is where Holocaust survivors, 1950, 55, like just a few years, Israel's just putting itself together, and then this happened, and they want to just abandon the village. Just leave the village, go back to Tel Aviv, live in a big city. The Rebbe said you will find comfort by continuing to build your village. It's the biggest village, it's like 3 villages already, because they want to still be a village, so they keep adding on Kfar Chabad Aleph, Beis, Gimel. We find comfort in the purpose that we give a tragedy. We don't find reason. We don't find answers. We don't find rationale, chas v'shalom. We find comfort. We find comfort by deciding to get out of the bleachers and stop being a spectator. We find comfort by getting in the game. We find comfort by leaving this situation strengthened in our Yiddishkeit, recommitted to Jewish life and to Jewish growth, and to know that we are an Am Olam, an eternal people, and that we have stared down worse times and bigger enemies, and we'll have to do what's necessary to protect ourselves and protect our children, because that's the moral and the right and the responsible thing to do. But we're not going to give in, chas v'shalom, to sadness. We're not going to become despondent. that will continue to build Yiddishkeit. And we live with the optimism and the hope that very, very soon, Mashiach will Eretz Hashem come. And when Mashiach comes, it'll be a whole new story. All the tears will be wiped away. All of reality will look different. And then finally, we'll be able to understand. Till Mashiach comes, you're not going to have answers. When Mashiach will finally come, then we'll be fully comforted. Then we'll know everything. Kulam yedu eisi, we'll know HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There will be no suffering, there will be no pain, there will be no travail, and our world will be the peaceful, beautiful, just place we all wish it was. May it happen speedily and in our days. Amen.